Hey everybody, Anthony Desiato here. We'll get into part 2 of the Homecoming in just a moment. Yesterday, I released a special mini-sode of my comic shop history in which I addressed the current worldwide health crisis and how it may or may not affect this cycle of my comic shop history. Specifically with respect to this episode, it features Chris Wilcock, the owner of Undiscovered Realm and the organizer of Undiscovered Realm Comic Con. Chris and I recorded the episode you're about to hear in mid-February on President's Day. At the time, the coronavirus was known about, but we certainly did not predict that it would escalate to the extent that it has. So everything that you hear in the episode is still relevant, but I just wanted to sort of give this little preamble so that when you're listening to the show, if there are moments where you think to yourself, why aren't they mentioning the coronavirus? That's why we recorded it a little while ago. That being said, it's a really fun episode. I think you'll enjoy it. We begin, Chris and I, by talking about our experiences as new fathers. So we talk about becoming dads and what these early months have been like. We also talk about Chris's reaction to alternate realities returning to action as a vendor at Undiscovered Realm Comic Con. We talk about the convention generally and Chris's efforts to expand sort of the comics presence there by bringing in other comic shops from the Westchester area. And then later in the episode, I recap the various screenings that my comic shop country had across 2019 when I was not recording. And I talk a bit about documentary distribution and sort of this plan to get my comic shop country out into the world. So it's a fun episode. I think you'll enjoy it. But I just wanted to take this moment here to sort of place it in its proper context. I also mentioned my comic shop country a moment ago. I spoke about this in greater detail in the mini-sode yesterday, but just as a quick reminder, My Comic Shop Country is available now on Apple TV and iTunes to rent or purchase. It will be available via Amazon to rent or purchase on April 7th. I hope many of you have already watched or plan to watch. If not, you know what we say here at Flat Squirrel Productions about hesitation. And thank you to everyone who has already rented or purchased. I really, really appreciate it. Before we get into the episode, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. The Hive Comics and Games is an oasis of nerd fun and events in the heart of Odessa, Texas. Whether it's comic book superhero stories or role-playing in a dungeon, the Hive is where to be. The Hive carries a majority of new comic titles each Wednesday and has all of your favorite titles in their back issue section. Follow them on Facebook at The Hive Comics and on Instagram at The Hive Comic Shop. If you've seen My Comic Shop Country, you know that they have a special spotlight in the credits. They were one of our Kickstarter backers, and there was a specific reward to be listed prominently in the credit section of the documentary. So I want to thank them for their Kickstarter support as well. Additionally, My Comic Shop History is also brought to you in part by a family of film festivals: the Point Lookout Film Festival on Long Island, New York, the Hang On to Your Shorts Film Festival in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and the Brightside Tavern Film Festival in Jersey City, New Jersey. Get tickets at brownpapertickets.com, and if you're a filmmaker, submit your work via Film Freeway. Be sure to also listen to the official Hang On to Your Shorts podcast via a Shared Universe podcast network. One of my films, By Spoon, the J. Mizell story, played at both Hang On to Your Shorts and Brightside. And as both a filmmaker and an attendee, I really can attest to the fact that these are very well-run, enjoyable festivals. So I encourage you to check them out once this period of social distancing has subsided. Lastly, if you're looking for more Flat Squirrel Productions content, I hope you'll check out the My Comic Shop History Patreon page. I recently revamped it, and I actually added video packages to the reward tiers, and I've been posting unused interview clips from My Comic Shop Country as the rewards. So if you've watched the new doc and you're looking for deleted scenes, the Patreon page is where to be. Thank you to everyone who has already become a patron. Your support enables me to continue to produce this show, so thank you very, very much. And finally, please make sure you connect. There are dedicated social media handles for My Comic Shop Country on Facebook at My Comic Shop Country, on Instagram at My Comic Shop Country Movie, and on Twitter at My Comic Shop Doc. And now, our episode.
Heavy heart, out on the road. Long time since I've been home. Feels like I'm running back to you.
Welcome to My Comic Shop History. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. This is part 2 of The Homecoming, and I'm here with Undiscovered Realm co-owner and Undiscovered Realm Comic Con organizer, Chris Wilcock. Welcome.
Hello. Hey.
I had a big smile on my face doing that introduction. This is
Been a while.
the second episode of the season, but it's the first one that I'm recording. This is my first podcast recording since like June of 2018.
8 months.
It's been a long time.
It is a long time.
Well, there's been a lot going on for me and for you, and the same thing.
Yeah.
So each of us became dads.
Yeah. That's where we left off on the last one, I think.
Yeah. So you and your wife
Into the
welcomed.
great unknown.
Yeah,
Yep.
You guys welcomed baby Jameson early July, right?
Yep.
Mid-July.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I welcomed Milo at the end of August. So, we could do episodes and seasons and series about parenthood. But generally, how's the experience been for you?
Really good. I know we were talking a little off the air, but I really feel like we hit the lotto. So when people ask me that question, I always have a little asterisk because I feel like I don't think we have the normal experience. The kid's been like an angel pretty much, and there's challenges. Of course, it's an adjustment, but nothing like it could be, and it's been great. So
yeah. No, I mean I would say the same. I've been saying to people, it's utterly life-changing in all of the ways that you hear about, but that you can't really know for sure, until you do it yourself. And, it completely shifts your worldview and your priorities, and it's the greatest responsibility and can be stressful and tiring and frustrating. But I feel like that all of that is so outweighed by the joy that it brings.
Exactly. And you get used to it to some extent. And I'm sure when he's running around tearing the house apart, it's going to be a whole different curveball, and you got to adapt to that. But look, I think I might have said this last time. It's just I know some people who have had kids that have no business having kids, and they've somehow gotten through it. So nobody knows what they're doing. You just take it day by day, and you do the best you can.
Yeah. No, I think we found that as well. And talking to other new parents, it's you figure it out as you go. So both of our wives delivered at White Plains Hospital.
Yeah.
And you gave me a helpful heads up, which was, get as much rest as you can, because once you get there, you're constantly interrupted, and you were not wrong.
It was crazy, every 10 minutes. And for me, I was so tired. I've never been that tired in my life, and not even because of that. I thought I was going to be no problem. I'm used to staying up, but we were working until 7 a.m. the night before because I was all right, I got to get all this done. This is any minute now. And then I went to eat at the diner in White Plains, and then my wife called me and she's like, I've been in labor for 5 hours. I didn't want to bother you because I don't want to go until it's time. And then I got home at 7:30 or 8, and she was like, it's time. And we went, and we went straight there. And I remember she was pretty far into it because she was not in a good mood. And she started screaming at me in the parking lot because I don't know, I parked 10 feet away from where she thought I should have parked. And I can't imagine what she was going through. So but I'm so tired at this point. And then it was another. Probably the baby was born at 7 p.m. or so. So 12 hours after that, and I'd already been up for almost 20, so it was a long day.
Yeah.
It takes a lot out of you, Not, I can't complain. I was not the one having the baby,
yeah,
but you are still mentally drained,
Yeah, no,
and I felt so bad for her.
Exactly.
But that feeling when you see the baby come out, it really is something else.
Yeah, that was, so for us, it ended up being a C-section. That was not the original plan. And then we basically hit a wall and made the call to do that.
We were very close as well. Yeah.
And so, I'm sitting next to my wife's head as this is happening, and then they take him out, and he's screaming his head off. So, but it was a good sound.
Yeah.
It's all right, he's all right.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And then they brought him over to one of the other doctors, and he's examining him. And, I'm with my wife, and then I'm looking over, I'm doing an ocular inspection. I'm counting fingers and toes. And then I go over there, and, again, he's still screaming, but I could put my hand on his chest, and he calmed a little bit. And then I put my my finger in his hand, and that was his first act in this world was grabbing that.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, it was a good feeling, and I felt bad because I got to do that before my wife did, and my wife's sister was there the whole time, so that was good. She was able to help her, and then
That's good.
You know, she was with her, and then as soon as he came out, you know, I did the same thing. I walked over to the little scale or wherever they put him in the warming tray.
Yeah.
And I put my hand out, and he grabbed it.
Yeah, but it was surreal because, you know, you go through, you know, all these months of the buildup, and then it's like, oh.
Yeah, there's a thing, a living human thing here now. Yeah, it was crazy. I'll never forget it. You know, I saw him pop out, and I think I just like started crying, honestly, like just joy. And but it just happened so fast, I don't remember anything.
Well, that was the thing, you know, because we had basically she never hit active labor, but it was like a full day of trying to get there. And, you know, it's waiting and waiting. You know, I'm watching episodes of Supernatural on my iPad, like, you know, just sitting around. And then once we made the call to do the C-section, boom, it was like within a half hour, he was out. It moved so fast. Like they gave me the scrubs to put on. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
it was like
it was
surreal.
nuts. Like same thing with her. And even though it wasn't a C-section, she kind of hit a wall, and it was getting close. And we were also on the last day before they were going to make her do it. When she finally did go into labor, and you know, it was the same thing. And then all of a sudden, it was just 12 hours of like just staring at the wall, taking a nap or something. And then all of a sudden, there's 30 people in the room, and it's like just chaos, you know.
Yeah, but to your point, you know, both leading up to that, and then once he was there, yeah, it was just a parade of doctors and nurses coming in, and look, it's all
That's
good
great,
stuff.
yeah.
People, and for people who aren't familiar with White Plains Hospital, I mean, I was born there 33 years ago.
Oh, awesome. I had never been there until then.
Well, they've renovated it considerably, and you know, the food is great.
Yeah,
I don't know if,
lobster. Yeah,
yeah, you got the steak and lobster, and they come in every day, and they take your food orders. Like, again, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about these things. It's all great, but it's like when you're exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, it's like every few minutes there's someone coming. Like every time you start to doze off. On our last day there, we made some comment to the nurse of like, oh, like, you know, it's a lot of people coming in and out. She goes, oh, why don't you put up the do not disturb sign?
Yeah. Oh, what? No one told me that existed.
Apparently that exists.
But even still, like, they still have to come in for these things. So it's not like they're just doing nonsense checks.
True.
Know?
And I don't know, if you miss the food order, do you not get your, you know? So, but that made me laugh. On the last day, I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, the only thing, it's like you get the little break if, like, my wife was breastfeeding, and so she has to do it. Like, otherwise they'll take the baby and, you know, give you like an hour or two, and they'll feed it and everything and the little thing. We didn't get to do that. So that would, even 2 hours of sleep would have been like, felt like I slept for a month. But what are you going to do?
Yeah. But, you know, eventually you settle into a routine and everything. And like those sleepless nights in the beginning, like it was a thing.
First
but now,
2 weeks are hard. And then after that, it really, for us anyway, it leveled out a bit.
Yeah.
Pretty quick. But yeah, and we're here now, and it's great.
I know, we are. So, you know, it's funny. So, you know, I planned this podcast hiatus for myself because, again, I knew we had the baby coming, and that's the priority, and I didn't want to have to worry about, as much as I enjoy this, I wanted to, you know, put that on the back burner. But, you know, one of the things, and this is very selfishly, but like in the back of my mind, I was wondering, I'm like, you know, once he's here and we're settled and everything, am I going to have the time to keep doing this? Am I going to have the energy? And am I going to have the interest? Like, will all of those three things still be there? And thankfully they are. Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this. But I have to say, it was helpful watching you, because I think it was like a little bit after, you know, Jameson, you know, was born, and I saw you posting on Facebook like the way you were before. Yeah. Like you were, I don't know, trying to get tickets to a concert or a movie or whatever it might be. And I know, like, it must seem obvious, but like in my mind there was sort of this feeling of like, will I still be interested in the same things? Like, will I have the same passions?
No, I agree with you 100%. And yeah, it is weird because like it's a major life change, but at the same time, a lot of things do stay somewhat the same. And I guess it's a credit to how well you were able to deal with it. I think some people, like, we're both busy, we both do a lot of stuff, and like, so not that it's the most important thing that's ever happened in my life, but it is still another thing you got to work into your life, you know? So you're somewhat used to it. I think some people, this is the first thing that they're like, yeah, and they don't know how to handle it, and they don't take it as well. Yeah. So there's you know.
It's true. I mean, they say, like, if you want something done, give it to the busiest person, right? Because they're used to, you know, handling a lot. So maybe that has something to do with it. But it was encouraging.
Oh, I'm glad.
You know, seeing, because I was like, all right, like, he's still, like, doing his stuff. He still has his interests. And then I found that was the same for me as well.
It's true. But, you know, that being said, I never thought about it till now. There's a lot of people I know who have, and they just, like, fall off the face of the planet, and they don't do anything anymore. So, I don't know.
Yeah. No, and I think it's, you know, it's important, you know, to still have your sense of self, and, you know, for the couple to still have an identity as a couple and
That's
individually,
hard too,
you know, and it's obviously requires a lot of effort and everything, but
it's worth it.
But yeah. So we're here. Maybe one day Jameson and Milo, they'll be podcasting. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe we'll have them on and they can talk.
Oh, that'll be great. I can't wait. But it's so, thankfully I ended up still having the time and everything to be able to bring the show back. But there still might not have been a show if not for Steve Odo, who
He's always saving the day.
he saved the dad of no. We were done. Like, we did season 5. I wrapped it all up. I was like, this is the end of the alternate reality saga. You can't just reminisce about
like
it
Star
anymore.
Wars.
Like, that's it. Like, it's the end of this. And on New Year's Day, he's like, all right, we're going to do Undiscovered Realm Comic Con. And I was like, all right, now I have something to talk about, like new comic shop history.
That's good. It's good
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, we haven't recorded the season premiere yet, but in that episode, people will have heard that by the time they hear this. But I'm going to have Steve, Odo, and Rich Roney, and we'll talk about Steve's decision to be a vendor at Undiscovered Realm
That's cool.
Comic Con.
I'll be interested.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, and for listeners, who tuned into the show, like, we talked about that as a possibility in the season 5 finale of, like, doing shows generally, but particularly this show. It's so close to the warehouse where Steve now
Nice
stores
Yeah.
everything from alternate realities. And, if you recall from the episode, like, he was not super into the idea. So we were very surprised at our New Year's Day brunch. And it was like towards the end of brunch too. Like, we talked about a lot of stuff. We were wrapping up. And he was like, all right, we're going to do Undiscovered Realm. And I was
One
like,
more thing.
okay. And I think during that conversation, I said to him, like, all right, I'll give Chris a heads up. From the beginning, I was it was a conscious choice. Like, I didn't want to insert myself too much in this process. That was the plan.
Yeah.
Because, as invested as I am in AR personally, like, it's not my store.
Yeah, sure.
And so I didn't want to push Steve in any direction. And hopefully it'll go great for him. But on the off chance it doesn't, I don't want it to be the sort of thing where it's like, I only
your
did this
fault.
because of you.
Yeah, it makes me nervous too. Like, I hope he does good,
So, so when he said that he was interested in doing this, like, I was very pleasantly surprised, because I do think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. The proximity alone and the fact that it's so close to where our store used to be.
Yeah.
I feel like the opportunity
The customer base
to
is
bring
there.
that customer base to the store to help the show grow and for Steve to move some of his product. And yes, on a personal level, for us to connect with these people we haven't seen in years. I think for all of those reasons, it makes sense. But I was pleasantly surprised when he said that. And I just left it with him. I was like, all right, I'll give Chris a heads up. And I left it at that. And I did. I think that day, or it was either that day or the day
right
after.
yeah,
So New Year's
sometime,
Day, I
yeah.
was like, hey, Steve wants to do this. And then, I asked you, like, all right, what should the next steps be? And you said you needed to know from Steve, like, what sort of space, what sort of setup he was looking to have. So I passed that along to Steve, and I gave him your contact info. And I was like, all right, so, like, let Chris know what sort of setup you want. Did you ever hear from him?
No. I was waiting.
Steve was very busy over the past few months reorganizing the warehouse units. And so I think he got a little preoccupied with that.
Understandable.
But I keep teasing him, for a guy whose life motto is hesitation kills, don't be a flat squirrel. He kind of dragged his feet with this. And it got to the point, I think, where we are now, like, you've sold out of the corner.
There's no corners for a while. And that's the thing. I figured he was going to want one of those. And I just wanted to lay it out. We have a lot of guests this year. So, like, the floor plan is, like, I'm having to cut into some spots. So I just wanted to get everyone I know is coming, like, laid out.
Right.
So, I didn't have any surprises later.
But the day where we texted about that, like, I was texting with Steve about one thing, and I was also texting with you about scheduling this. So I had these separate conversations. And in both of them, like, Steve was like, oh, by the way, I haven't contacted Chris yet. And then, like, minutes later, you were like, oh, by the way, I haven't heard from Steve. So that's when I got to the point where I was like, all right, I want to make sure that this happens. So then I stepped in a little bit more, and we spoke about what space options there would be. And, when I floated it to Steve of, like, okay, this is the setup we can have, like, these 2 booths on a corner, a little bit of time went by before the text response came through. And when it did, I looked at Steph and I was like, he's going to poo-poo this. Like, he's not going to be into this. Because as you know, and as listeners know, Steve can be a little pessimistic at times, although he's softened in his retirement. But I was really expecting, like, some reason why he didn't want that amount of space or whatever. And he goes, sure, why not? Tell Chris we're a go. And I was blown away. I was like, this is amazing.
Good, yeah. I mean, I couldn't see him doing anything with one booth. not that you can't, but like obviously he's got a lot of stuff, and if you want to like set it up nice, and you really need at least those two. That's what we use, like a double,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, no, and I, not to speak for him, but I know we both really appreciate, your help, with the
Of course,
space and
I'm happy
everything.
to have you guys there.
So, like, when I texted you and I said, Steve wants to do the show as a vendor, what was what went through your mind?
I mean, you did bring it up as a possibility, and so it wasn't like it was some like insane notion. But I was surprised, just like you, because it is an undertaking. But I was happy, and for the same reasons we just talked about, I was, this makes sense on a lot of levels, and then it makes even more sense because it ties this all back in, and it works on every level pretty much. So, I think it'll be cool.
Yeah, I mean, all kidding aside, like, do you feel pressure of like, I hope he does well?
I feel that pressure anyway
For everyone, probably, right?
Yeah, because going back to I think we went over this in the past a little bit, but being vendors, I know how it is. You have that bad show. You don't make what you think you're going to make. And even if there's a ton of people there, you just don't know. Maybe they don't want that particular set of items, and there's just no rhyme or reason to it sometimes. So there's that extra weight that if I was just a promoter, they always have the bad reputation of, they don't give a crap about the vendors and blah, 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 blah. It's just how many people come through the door. I care about it all. So yeah, and then on another level, I really care about it because I know, like, he's gonna get upset or something like that, and he's got his reputation, and I know people are gonna come wanting to see it, and I just hope it pans out like he wants and how everybody wants, But so yeah, I would have that with any vendor. It's not like it's but there's that little bit of icing on top, I guess,
Right,
for lack of a better term.
Well, thankfully, as far as him, dragging his feet and everything, he did eventually mail the check.
Yes,
which you said you got, right?
Yeah, well, I think so. It's here somewhere. Somebody told me that there was a check from him that came in the mail. I wasn't here this weekend, so.
So speaking of the show generally, right? So first weekend of June.
Yeah.
Right? 6th and 7th?
Yes, yeah.
All right. So this is the 4th edition of the show, right?
Fourth show, 5th year.
Right, because there was the 1 year you had to skip, right?
Yeah.
And I know, so we're recording this late February. This episode will go up towards the end of March. So I know more guest announcements will be out by the time people hear this. But what are some of the guest announcements that you dropped so far?
So far, we've only done a few. I try to do like one a week, give or take, unless something like batches in with the other one. Chris Sabat, who is probably the biggest anime guest you could have in the entire world, and that was a lot of work, multiple years of kind of getting the fire lit to start the whole process. And then, a couple months of actually trying to get it booked for this year's show. And he's, if you don't know, he's Vegeta and Piccolo from Dragon Ball, plus a bunch of other characters. He's All Might from My Hero Academia, which is by far the biggest anime in the world right now. And a million other things. Great guy, great guest. So very happy to have him.
Cool.
We announced so far 3 of the original Ninja Turtles from the 80s cartoon. And the cool thing with the voice actors is they are not generally just one thing. They have lots and lots of different. So, like, for instance, Rob Paulson, who's Raphael in the original 80s Ninja Turtles. He's also Pinky from Pinky and the Brain. A ton of other 80s cartoons. He's Wacko from the Animaniacs. So a lot of really big things. And I like those guests, too, because people hear the voices. They get really excited. Stuff that people are attached to, and you do draw on, like, maybe somebody doesn't care about Ninja Turtles, but they love Animaniacs, or they love Pinky and the Brain, or they love the Snorks, or everything in between, and you get a lot of that. So you draw from a lot of fandoms instead of the one. So we have that. We have a couple of the other Ninja Turtles. We announced Larry Kenny, who is Lion-O from Thundercats, and he's also Count Chocula and Sonny the Cuckoo from the ad icons and commercials and stuff like that. And that's going back to Pops and stuff like that. Ad icons are a huge line for Pops, and a lot of people collect them. That's like one of the most sought after lines of all the old school ad icons, like Sonny the Cuckoo, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, all that stuff, down to like the Pop-Tarts ad icon came out last week, so stuff like that. So people like to get that type of stuff signed, being as that we're a big pop show and big pop vendors.
Right.
So that ties in too. So I kind of look for that too when we book guests, so that there's like a tie-in all around. But we have a lot more, and that's what I was saying before with the floor plan. Like, I don't remember how many we had last year, maybe like 8. I think we're already at like 15, and there's more coming, and we're definitely more than doubling down on guests this year. And we don't have as much. Last year we were on Free Comic Book Day and Star Wars Day, so it's all this competition.
You're competing with a lot of big stuff.
Exactly, and free things, so it's hard,
Right.
The weather will be a little warmer, so you don't know. But I think we have a good show lined up this year. But now space is at a premium. It's running out much earlier than normal, and which is a good thing, but you got to figure it out. It's a lot more work.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I know that these first guests have been voice actors, and, I know in past shows, the voice actors have been, well represented,
Yeah.
At the show. I mean, has that been a conscious thing from the start? Because for the reasons you said that they touch on a lot of different fandoms, or is it more that's who's available, or a little bit of both?
Well, yeah,
Your
there's
personal
always a
taste?
mix of things. Yeah, I mean, like for me, I don't watch any anime. Some of the guys that work with us are huge anime fans. So, but I know how big of a guest he is. I know how much of a demand there is for him. Like I got a message the other day from somebody in Puerto Rico in broken English saying, "I'm coming to the show. When are tickets going on sale? My goal in life is to meet Chris Sabat. I want my Vegeta Pop signed. Like I'll be there. This is coming from another country, essentially, sort of." And things like that. So there is a big demand, and being vendors at other shows, we get to see how guests interact with people, how they are with the fans, and I put a lot of that in. Even if it's like the biggest guest in the world, and we can get them, if they're just jerks to the fans or put out a bad vibe, I'm not going to book them. And vice versa, if they're a smaller guest and I see how great they are, I know that when people come to the show, they're going to see that and have a good time, and that's what's important when they leave. That they had a great time, that, they interact with these people. And that's why I said, like, with the voices and stuff like that, it really does, like, when people hear that, or even at the panels and stuff like that, it really, it triggers that nostalgia in the back of your head, and it's nice. And, this year, definitely tying stuff together, like trying to get all the Ninja Turtles, or having multiple people from, this anime, or there's like an older movie that we're bringing a lot of the cast from that we haven't announced them yet. So we can get them all in one thing. So not reunions per se, but so there is some of that. But then you're also at the mercy of who's available. There was multiple guests I tried to get that were filming movies or TV shows, and I'm working on like one pretty big guest right now, and there's supposedly the chance of a writer strike happening.
Right.
And they're recording. So when I originally talked to them, they're like, "Oh, this is perfect. It's right when filming ends for the season of the TV show. It'll be great." But now if that happens, it's going to bump everything else back, and that could cause all sorts of havoc. And that's not just for that one guest. That's going to be the case for anybody that's on anything that's scripted that isn't done filming yet. So we'll see what happens. So there's a lot of stuff in play that you don't really think about when you're looking at booking guests,
Sure. I mean, and I have to say, from moderating, the panels at the last show, as far as the effect that the voice actors can have on myself as well, and on the audience, like whenever they, would break out a voice of one of their favorite characters, one of the most famous characters, people were so into it. So, that is really cool. And certainly the folks that you had, at the show previously, from what I could see up on stage and on the floor, like they really seemed like they were engaging with fans and everything.
Yeah, and I think that's cool too. I like, and not that we're not I keep saying this to people this year. We're not the biggest show, but we're definitely not the smallest show. We're like a nice little mid-sized show. But I think that's where the industry's swinging, and people are sick of like being shoulder to shoulder and not being able to move. And you can spend the day there, breathe, and you can actually get a couple minutes talking to the guest, or it's the person you came to see, where you're not just like 10 seconds, here's your little scribble and a photo, get out of the way, the next person's coming. And that's nice. And I think that's the experience that people are looking for these days. And so that's what we're trying to provide.
Right. I know it's always challenging, but is it getting, like, now this is the fourth time you're planning the show? Is it getting easier, or just different problems?
I mean, there's always stuff, but no, it 100% gets easier every year, because even, we're focusing on the guest aspect right now, but, the first year, there's so many fly-by-night operations these days, and like shows that everyone thinks they can run a show, and then when it comes time, like they don't have the money together, they don't have this, nobody shows up, they didn't advertise. A million things go wrong, and it's hard, and so because of that, whenever it's a first year show, you really have to campaign and try and convince people that you're not that.
Right.
And, people want money up front because they don't trust that they're going to do well enough or get paid at the end. And that creates all sorts of issues, because if you need $50,000, $100,000 up front, there's obvious complications for that. So that aspect alone makes things a lot easier. They see that you have a well-run show. They've heard good things. So they're more likely to give you guests. Agents will also, because they know the guests are going to do all right, sometimes they'll even offer you guests at no cost, even though you still got to fly them in and hotel and food. So there's always a cost, but at least there's no guarantee.
Right.
And or if there's another big guest there that is really big. They know that just because they're there, those fans are coming to see them, they're going to get that, splash over. So it does get easier every year. Also, like, you kind of figure out the floor plan tweaks, and it's easier to react to things and move things around and know the space you're working with. And hopefully people came the year before, they come back, and it snowballs year to year to year, and you grow and grow and grow. And that's how you get bigger guests, and then more people, and that's how these things work, right? So it's a challenge nonetheless, and it's a lot of work, but those things make a huge difference in easing some of the strains.
Right. Cool. As far as, the guests and the panels and everything, do you have a moderator yet?
No. So that was one of the challenges. You did a great job last year, but because you're going to be working with alternate, that left the void. So I put up a post. There's a Facebook group of just people who promote shows. And I put up a post just asking, like, what do you typically do? And a million different people responded with different things. But I got a private message from a gentleman who, this is what he does. He works during the week. He actually lives in Florida. But he works during the week, and he does panel moderation on the end. And he actually brought up Chris Desiato because he's worked with C2E2 and other Reed Pop shows and stuff like that. And he's like, I guess he saw mutual friends, and he's like, I've worked with this person and this person and this person. And, they had nothing but great things to say. And, so I think that's what we're going to do.
Oh, good.
I talked to him on the phone the other day, and barring something happening, I'm going to meet with him at C2E2 because he's going to be there doing the panels.
Okay.
And, Delando had great things to say. He said, this is the type, you give him a schedule and you don't have to think about anything. And that's what I'm looking for. There's so many other things going on. I don't want to have to like run up and down the stairs. And so that's working out.
All right, good.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So, again, I had a great time doing it last year. It was I think the most challenging thing was that, so much of it was out of my wheelhouse, like doing the Power Rangers panel, no prep needed for that, right?
Very hard, I can imagine, yeah.
But for a lot of, the voice actors and anime, it's like just not something I'm as familiar with. So, a lot more prep went into it. But for this year, I was so excited, when Steve said he was going to do the show. I'm like, this is great. I'll be at the booth all weekend. And then I was like, I don't know if you were looking for me to do that. And thankfully,
I had thought about it already.
All worked out.
I figured that was going to be an issue, but yeah.
Yeah.
But that's good.
Good. No, I'm sure it'll be great. And I'm glad that you have, a lead on that moderator.
Yeah. And then that'll solve that problem, instead of having to figure it out every year. Like, hopefully he'll be the guy forever,
But as far as, like you say, you feel pressure, like you hope that, the show does well for Steve and obviously for all the other vendors. I feel the pressure too on both ends because it's like, I've encouraged Steve to do this. So it's like, I hope he does well. And then, you've been so great with, having us at the show. It's like, I hope we pull in our former customers. I mean, like, that's certainly one of my goals, from the personal side, but more so, so we can move some product and get more comics fans to the show.
Yeah. And I'm sure that will be the case. And we definitely, by not being on Free Comic Book Day this year, we're going to have a lot more comic guys, but we try very hard to balance, like, not having, like, I had two different supply companies messaging me for the last week, that sell, like, top loaders and, sleeves and all sorts of that type of stuff. But I'm not going to have more than one at the show because it's pointless. Let them make their money. If you have two, the same amount of money is getting spent, just split in half. So why do it? Right. And, but I said to them, comic vendors are the one vendor where you can have, 100 and they're going to have, some crossover, but almost 100 different selections. So it's fine.
Right.
So the more the better. So I'm excited to have that. I know he's probably got some good stuff buried in there, and it should be good.
Speaking of supplies, there was, a number of us within the alternate realities community had been talking to Steve about, what he should do with the show. And there was a brief, horrifying moment where it seemed like he was serious. I suspected he wasn't, but it seemed like he might be serious, that he he was just going to bring pre-made bags and boards. That's it. The rationale was that, as he likes to say, that was our best seller at Alternate Realities. You can buy a pack of 100 bags and a pack of 100 boards for, I don't know, $15, $20. He would sell a pre-made bag and board for 25 cents. And it always astounded him that so many people bought the pre-made bags and boards, despite the fact that they were ultimately spending more money.
Yeah.
But they wanted the convenience of not having to make it up.
Well, and also when you leave the store with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a couple of the guys were convinced. They were like, he just wants to have like 10 long boxes of bags and boards. And I was like, I don't think so. Thankfully, that's not the direction he's going in. But there was that brief moment where I was like, this is It's going to be a disaster.
I know, despite that, we do have multiple comic stores here, which that's another thing. We worked it out so that we could have. I went to all the local stores, and they're going to be at the show, and then also we're going to let them sell tickets to the show at their respective stores, so that people all over the county don't have to go to the county center to avoid the stupid online fees and things like that. They can just go to their local store that they're going to anyway. And then also some people that might not know about it will see the little ad at the store, and it works for everybody.
Yep.
And then we'll put on the website, go to Spider's Web, go to All Yeah Comics, go to New York Hardcore, and whoever else. And so it's that's how I like to work, mutually beneficial across the board. Everybody wins. So that's going to be good too. So we will have a pretty good comic. But even though we have those here, this central location is just kind of, there's a void. Because you have to go all the way to Harrison, even though it's not far, but it's a 20 minutes out of the way. Or you got to go to the Spider's Web, which is, again, the other side of the city. New York Hardcore, Dobbs Ferry, still no direct route. So this area right here, there are a lot of people looking for comics. They go to Newberry in the mall, and it's like the furthest, even though it's a comic store, it's not a comic store, But they do that just because that's the only thing convenient. So I think we do have a lot of people looking for books, especially back issues, because some of these stores are on the smaller side. They don't have that huge backlog, and that's why some of the vendors that don't have stores and only deal with back issues are good. But then they don't have any new releases. So then the store guys have the new releases, and I think it's going to be good. Everybody kind of has their little thing that they're going to do. Is bringing some of the kids workshops and things like that. I was talking to them yesterday.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm trying to grow all that stuff. But again, space is at a premium, so I'm trying to fit all that stuff in, and it's hard because I'm trying to figure out what I got to cut out to do so.
No, I was. I know you had mentioned ahead of time that you were planning to reach out to the local stores, and I was very happy to hear that they were on board with this. I know New York Hardcore has been at the show.
Yeah,
before.
they're there every year. Yeah.
Spider's Web has been
Spider's
there
Web
at least once.
Not last year because it was a free comic book day, but the year before.
So I know they'd been there before, and I know had never been.
Yeah, they have not.
But again, I think it makes a lot of sense for all the reasons that you said, and for those stores in particular. Again, with the location, this is an opportunity now for them to tap into.
Yeah, you can get a lot of new customers.
To customers that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. That hopefully will go to the store
for less than the cost of running an ad. You're selling stuff, so you're recouping that money anyway, and you're literally reaching your exact customers who may not know you're there, or maybe they just need that reminder.
I mean, Mark at All Yeah, to his credit, he will set up at Alamo Draft House at the movie theater, when the superhero movies come out, so that's great. And I give him credit for doing that. I'm glad he was on board. To be honest, that was a store I was most, I don't want to say skeptical, but I was like, I don't know if they'll go for the convention, because again, the other stores have done it. They haven't. Yeah. So now you actually went in person? Yeah,
I did it. I spent a day, and I went around to each of them, myself and Carlos and Jake.
Was that your first time at All Yeah?
No, I had been there once or twice before, just checking it out, when they first opened, and then I think I was looking for something one other time. But yeah.
How, if you don't mind me asking, how receptive was Mark, or how much convincing did he need?
So going in, I thought the same thing. I was like, I know New York Hardcore is going to be all about it because they do it anyway, and they're doing other shows and stuff like that. Spider's Web, I don't see at any other shows, but they have done it in the past, and I know last year was Free Comic Book Day. But also, I figured they would go for it. From my perspective, there's zero reason not to go for it, because you're getting free advertising, you're getting space at the convention, and it's great all around. But you never know. Some people just don't want to change their habits.
Right.
So I walked in. I went to Spider's Web first, and he was, I explained to him real quick, and he was all about it. He's like, this sounds great. You don't even have to explain anymore. This sounds like a great thing. I said, okay, cool. I'll be in touch once the tickets go on sale. Then I went to New York. Obviously, that was 2 seconds. And then we went to All Yeah. And I thought the same thing. I said, if anyone's going to say no, not in a negative fashion, because they haven't done it before and things like that, this is going to be the one. But I walked in, and instantly, I would say, I started to explain the same thing within 30 seconds. Also, they work a lot with Terrific Con, and Mohegan Sun, and which Mitch, who runs that show, is a great guy also, and I know he does a lot of stuff. So I thought, all right, maybe they even had the sign on the door, tickets on sale. So basically the same type of thing. So I thought maybe that might cause a problem, but he's like, no, it's no problem. That's 2 hours away, which it is, even though we share similar customers. But we're all at each other's shows anyway. We all know each other. And he said, no, it's no problem. Sounds great. Let me just talk to my partner and figure out, if he wants to have a table to do art and stuff like that. And then as we talked about it, he said, I know these other two guys who do the kids workshops, and, they're interested in doing it. Do you have the space for it? And I said, yeah, and the same thing, like I said, with Steve, I want to figure all this out now before I sell all the booths, and then I can't, you know. So and then, yeah, so everybody was very receptive, which again they should be because this is about as good of an ad as you can get, you know.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I mean, so is having a stronger comics presence, I mean, is that a goal for you going into the show?
Yeah, for sure. Because there are people that come looking for that, you know, specifically. That's what they're there for. They don't care about toys. They don't care about games. They don't care about the guests. They're looking for back issues of comics or whatever. Right. So that's definitely a main thing. And like I said, that's one of the few things you can fill up the floor with and not overlap.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a strong thing. We had, you know, a couple last year, but nowhere near what I wanted just because of Free Comic Book. You can't leave your store on that day. So we had the guys that don't have stores. Right. So we're going to have a lot of comics this year. That's great.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for that. I mean, I think you're poised, you know, to have a lot of growth this year because if you retain the people who've been before and, you know, the anime fans and the animation fans and you can pull in more comic people. Exactly.
And that's what I'm really, and that's the goal every year. But this year I'm specifically trying to, like, you know, we have the anime, we have the cartoons, I'm trying to, you know, I'm working on booking one or two face actors. You know, when I say face actors, like the voice actors are great, but people, if you saw them walk by on the street, you might not even know. So people that people can see and identify with. And then, you know, the wrestler, you know, or, you know, the horror act, you know, just something to hit on each genre, you know, so that the sum is, you know, there for everybody. So even if there's one thing you want, there's a reason to come. Right. Comics are the hardest thing. Getting the vendors is one thing, but the comic guests is so hard. Like, honestly, it's still the biggest challenge. And all these other shows either are in that industry already and that's where they came from, or they have, like, somebody that is dedicated working for the show that's their job, is just booking Artist Alley and stuff like that. You know, we definitely have our associates for this, but I do, you know, overwhelming majority of the booking myself. And that's the one thing that's like my weakest point, you know. So every year it helps, you know. I know Ken Marion's coming back. I talked to him the other day and stuff like that.
Oh, okay,
so, yeah.
good. Okay,
and he was so happy. He's like, I had a great time, and I'm really happy to come back.
Because we were texting, and he was like, I think I'm going to do the show. I'm like, yeah, it'll be great. I'm glad.
Cool, yeah. So I got to send him an email back. I was crazy all weekend. But, you know, that's the thing, trying to find more people. And then, I was going to bring some of them. You know, so it does grow each year, but that's definitely the hardest part and something that I want to continue to grow.
Well, it's funny, like with the creators, because, you know, periodically when I, you know, post about the podcast or, you know, I'll solicit suggestions for episodes or seasons or just solicit feedback generally, one thing that keeps coming up is like, oh, you should have more creators on the show. It's not for lack of interest. It's like, it's difficult. And especially since I do like to do these in person, I mean, that really adds a whole layer. But just like, you know, trying to get them,
it's hard,
you know, to come out, it's tough. With though, you know, they really do have a lot of connections with creators in the industry. So that, you know,
and that's what
that
you
might
need.
be a way to you know,
and,
get in touch with someone potentially.
And it's hard, especially in this area, just because there's so many shows that everybody already has that hookup, and, you know, people are doing the other shows. Yeah. That's another interesting thing for this year, actually, is we're getting some vendors that are like somebody I see at a lot of shows, but they live all the way in like Nashville or something. And they're coming out because you can do a whole East Coast run the way the show's lined up this year. You can do Awesome Con, Hudson Valley Comic Con, East Coast Comic Con, Cradle Con in Long Island, us, CharaCon in Connecticut, and Wizard World Philly 7 weeks in a row without going more than 2 hours away. So even if you're from the West Coast, you can come out here and just do a string of shows, and you don't have to drive back and forth or do any of this stuff. So I think a lot of people are kind of doing that this year, which is nice that it lined up that way.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Jumping back to the non-comics guests for a second. If you ever get a Smallville guest, I don't care what professional moderator you have, I want that.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, I thought about it, but like Wizard World has been doing Tom Welling and
Rosenbaum.
At every show. Like that's their thing this year. I think they just signed them for the year or whatever. So I'm pretty sure they didn't announce them for Philly yet, but I'm 99% sure they're going to be a Philly. And Rosenbaum is at Terrificon because they're doing the Justice League voice thing. So
you know what though? If you ever did get Rosenbaum, you would have no need for a moderator. Because I don't know if you've watched.
I've seen clips. Yeah,
he doesn't need one. Yeah. He just does his own thing. So I would just be sitting there anyway. But it would be fun to meet him.
Yeah.
But no, very cool. You know, I mean, I think it's great that, so obviously Alternate Realities, New York Hardcore, Spider's Web, any other like comic shops that you expect?
There's a place called Next Gen that's in Long Island. They do a lot of conventions, but they have a shop. He's coming. Another store that he works with, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, they're coming. And then a lot of the guys, like I said, that don't have stores that just do shows, we have a few of them coming as well. So right there, I mean, that's already over 10 vendors that have decent selections, and there's
Good.
more,
Because, one of the things Steve mentioned at some point, he talked about a show he did like years and years ago where like he was one of the only comics vendors there, and he didn't do well. And I was like, well, you won't be the only one. Like there will be more comics vendors. So no, I think that's great. And, for people listening to this, like if you haven't been to the show before, like, I mean, I really hope you'll come check it out.
Yeah, please do. It helps, it's a mom and pop, operation, and every person that comes, directly helps.
The last convention that Alternate Realities did was, I don't know, like 2013 or 14. It was like not long before the store closed. It was at the Westchester County Center. It wasn't your show, obviously.
That's what's East Coast Comic Con now.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So we did that. It was just one day. And that's the last time we did it. This will have a larger setup at your show than we did there. But that was the last one. And prior to that, we really hadn't done conventions. I mean, pretty much in the entire time I was part of the store. I mean, back in the day, they used to do it a lot more. So my point is it
was different then.
Out of practice. Though.
Yeah.
And as someone who does shows all the time, I mean, any, like just for example, I haven't floated this to Steve yet. I doubt he'll be on board, but like credit cards.
Yeah.
Because I know there's the Square Reader you can get and a Squarespace account, right? Do you recommend that?
So we had, because we had a store, we had a dedicated like terminal, and then we purchased a portable version of that that had its own like cell service in it for conventions. But last year we switched over to Square, just because I like the hardware is gorgeous. It looks like a little iPhone that's just built in. You don't have to print receipts; they just text or email. So that's another thing. We would have like a mountain of receipts we had to keep. You can use Wi-Fi. If the thing goes down, you can do it on anybody's cell phone. And then also Square does like some cool things where like they'll give you lines of credit based on your swipes. So like let's say you do X amount a year, they might give you $50,000 in credit, and then they just recover that off of future swipes. They just take like 15% out of your future swipes because they can see how much you're doing on a regular basis. And that helps a lot too, especially in this industry. Like, say some crazy collection comes up and you need 40 grand in cash, you can draw from that and then pay it down and you're going to pay it as you sell that stuff that you bought.
Right.
So things like that. There's a lot of reasons. And I like Square. You can access it from wherever.
But you recommend, whether it's that or something else, you recommend taking credit cards?
Oh, you have to take credit cards.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
because I suspect Steve's response will be no, like cash only. But I bring this up because it's like, again, he's not been behind the table at a convention in a while, and I would assume most people, a lot of people
bring cash. Don't get me wrong, but it does go really quickly.
Right.
And there's also people that will spend money they do not have because they have a credit card and they can do it. Maybe they don't get paid till next week,
right?
And they have the money now on their card. And also, one thing with conventions nowadays is 99% of the guests only take cash. So people end up stripping all their cash out, getting autographs and photo ops and things like that.
Gotcha.
And then they go shopping with what's left over. So you really want to take credit cards. And it's so easy now. Like literally any person can take Square. Like you don't even need to have a store or a license or, a tax ID or anything.
I might just play the snippet of you for
fun.
him because I think, he, I've said this to you before, I think both on and off mic, he thinks very highly of you.
That means a lot to me. It really does.
He very much admires the work ethic. So I think if I were to say like, hey, Steve, I really think you should take credit cards, he'll have a million reasons why not. But I think maybe if he hears it from you,
I hope so.
It'll carry some more
it will
weight.
make a huge difference because think about like I almost never have cash on me anymore,
I never have
what I mean?
cash.
And say you have like a nice statue or something that's hundreds of dollars, like you're not, some people have it on them, but for the most part, you could lose that. Like people don't do that. It's a different world now, and also like going to the tattoo shop for a second, like we used to do like almost all cash, and now I think 90% of our transactions are credit cards, even though people have the cash on them because you get points, you get airline miles, you get this and that. So you get cash back. If you have a 3% cash back, now your $500 statue is a little cheaper, or you get some airline miles or something like that. So everybody uses cards for everything. So you really are at a disadvantage. Like we printed a sign that on our banner, it says like all the different credit cards and PayPal and all that. And I can't tell you like how many people come straight to us because they see that and they just don't know that the other ones take it.
All right. I'll work on that. But it's true. Like my wife and her whole family, they're real big on our whole honeymoon was points. Like they're big travelers. And anyway, all right. So I'll talk to him about that. The one thing that I've been, trying to steer him toward is really taking advantage of the proximity between the county center and the warehouse where he has all of his product. Because it's the sort of thing, and going back to another one of his Odoisms, having backups for backups of backups, I said to him, I'm like, we can have, you bring a mix of things because you don't really know what's going to be moving the most, and have backup lots of each of those things. So if you bring statues and they fly, one of us will run to the warehouse and get more statues.
Exactly.
And you could do that with anything.
No, it's key. Like, that's one of the reasons we do so well at New York Comic Con is that we're able to come back every night and restock exactly what we're missing. We can't do that at any other show. And it makes a huge difference, like a huge, 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 huge difference. So you need to that's all going to be in the prep beforehand too, because like if he has it, don't bring 5 of the same statue with you,
right? Because
it might just take up space. Bring the biggest mix you can, and then just restock it. Or even if you have rent a U-Haul, it's going to cost like $20. Keep it in the U-Haul, and then you go run out into the parking lot and get some more.
Well, Westies has vans, and since he's their best customer, I think they'll probably let him.
Yeah, same thing. Depending how much space you need, But that's the thing. We keep a lot of backstock in the van or trailer, and then we can even run into the parking lot and go get it if we sell out of something, Or keep the boxes in there, so that if you do sell, just give us 2 seconds, we'll get the box for you. This way, you're not wasting a ton of your booth space storing all the giant empty containers and things like that.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, been the biggest thing I've been trying to gently, because Steve has very specific views of what he wants to do, and I respect that.
Oh, well, yeah.
But, again, I want this to be as successful for him as possible. And I think, so that's sort of, I've just been trying to encourage him, again, take advantage of how close you are, bring a mix of stuff, have backups. I will talk to him about the credit card processing. Any other general tips that that comes to mind?
The prep is key. If he does have extra stuff in storage, make sure it's accessible. Where it is. Have it all, ready to go. Like going back to what I said with New York Comic Con, like if we have 72 of a pop and it's a 4-day show, I'll pre-make allocations of 18s so that if we do run through it, who cares if you sell 72 the first day or you sell 18, it's the same thing. But you're not wasting all that space. You can now bring more things, stuff like that. Right. Just have it ready to go. So at the end of the night, you can even run over to, if Westies is open, I don't know if they're 24-hour or whatever, and just go refill the van and bring it back the next day.
They'll be 24/7.
There you go. So I know my storages, but not all of them do it. But yeah, you just run in, refill the van, and come back the next morning. That's what we do after we get some food, and then we go to the van and trailer for a couple hours, restock everything that's missing, and we're ready to go the next morning. Yeah. And that's key. I mean, you can't sell it if you don't have it, right? Yeah. And see, if people ask for something and you have it, he's local, which is nice, so he can say, hey, you could buy this and I could ship it to you. I can come get it. I can bring it tomorrow. You have a lot of options that you don't have when you're halfway across the country.
Right. And I think for him, because I had a lunch with him and we talked a little bit about, because that was the thing that I was trying to get a sense of from him. It's like, what do you want to get out of this? Because it's not, it's not my show or store. So it's like, what do you want to get out of this? And for him, there are a couple specific types of items that, because for people, just as a quick recap, he's been selling his remaining product on eBay. And there are certain items like statues and hardcovers that are more challenging to ship. So I know those are some of the things that he's hoping to really move at the show. But he did also say, and I think this is great, and I know he will do this, is, maybe have some flyers with his eBay account stuff and things like that.
Definitely want that.
And I'm sure again, my personal hope is that we'll be able to pull, and getting the word out to them will be really critical, but getting the word out to our former customers. This show is going to be June 2020, 5 years since the store closed.
Yeah, so there you go.
So a lot of these people we haven't seen in a long time. I know a lot of them are at Spider's Web. So
because they'll be coming through too, and a lot of them might be coming to the show to begin with. So there should be some excitement for it.
But I genuinely, and maybe I'm a cockeyed optimist, but I genuinely think for a lot of our customers, I mean, if they're available, if they're able to come, those are question marks. But if they are, I don't know. I mean, Steve engendered a lot of goodwill with these people over all these years, and we really saw that, especially when the store closed. So I would like to think that if an AR customer sees like AR as a vendor at the show, that would be some sort of pull.
Yeah, and you have that cool little graphic made up, so we'll do some promotion on our side too.
Oh Chris Giarusso, he knocked it out of the park with that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, and that's that's what I picture in my head when I think about you guys being there. So it's cool to see that.
With the former store sign.
Yeah, you put it up.
I mean,
it's big, but
that wasn't in the art by accident.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
But no, we're well. I think I'm very excited. Steve, I don't know if I would say he's excited, but he's on board, and that's not nothing. We have Bill Mayo.
Yeah, that's cool. I haven't seen him in forever.
He's flying in for this. Like he's really excited for it. Brian O'Day. Well, he'll
Yep.
be there
Yeah.
doing
He's already
private
requested
security.
Rob Paulson.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
Okay. But no, very cool. When will tickets be on sale?
So I'm we're going away. So this is the middle of February, and we're recording this. Sorry, spoiler alert. We're going to C2E2 Monday, and then in Chicago, and then straight to Cleveland. So we're going to be gone for 2 weeks. I had a meeting at the county center on Friday, and they're working on a new ticketing thing that works with Ticketmaster, but has like a quarter of the fees. So I'll stop for a second. Can't even hear. The phone's ringing. Sorry. We're at the
ambiance.
store. Yeah. But
Yeah, we don't have my home recording space anymore. The baby.
the baby took it. But yeah, so we're working on something to reduce the ticketing fees dramatically for people that buy online and stuff like that. So they're waiting to set that up. So I'm hoping sometime by the middle of March when we get back. But absolutely by the end of March. And they'll be on sale. And like I said, we'll have them online. You can go to the county center or at all the local stores. You can stop in when you're getting your comics and pick up your tickets.
All right, very good. So everyone listening, keep an eye out for that. And obviously, this is really the theme of the season, so we're going to keep talking about the show. But yeah, I hope, if you're a listener and you're in the area, or you're going to be in the area, or you can be in the area.
Yeah, it's
I encourage you to come.
Please. And again, if you're not familiar, we're like 25 minutes from New York City, a few minutes from Connecticut, close to Jersey. PA is a straight shot off the highway. All the buses and the train from Grand Central in the city stops in the parking lot of the venue. There's really no reason. It's a good central location. And it's going to be a good show.
Yeah. And I mean, Steve Odo is going to open up the alternate realities vault.
Yeah.
But
Who knows what's in there?
But to one of your earlier points, I mean, again, as far as having, multiple vendors, but them sort of covering different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the store closed 5 years ago, so there's nothing, Steve doesn't have anything that recent, but there's
That's
a whole...
what people will probably be looking for.
Yeah, there's this whole period from a few years ago that's been perfectly preserved in the warehouse.
And if it's good stuff, all the other vendors are going to be long out of it too. So,
Right.
And even if it's stuff that sells on eBay, there's no fees,
Right.
so you can move through it there quicker.
So, the theme and title of this mini-series is Homecoming. And so in addition to AR's Homecoming at this convention and the convention returning, we have my documentary film, My Comic Shop Country, coming out. It's been a long road to get to this point. And I did an episode with my wife last year. We talked about the movie generally, and we talked about the little cast and crew and Kickstarter backer screening that we had in March 2018. Since then, and just based on the recording schedule, I didn't really have much of an opportunity to talk about this on the show, but the movie screened a handful of other times. And I figured I could do a quick recap of those now. It was interesting. First let me say, every screening, I appreciated having the opportunity, and it really meant a lot to me. The screenings where we only had a few people and the screenings where we had a lot of people, I appreciate everyone that came out. But I will say, each screening had its own stressors, I guess. But more so, I think, than in the past, I was really able to take something positive and valuable from each one. So, we did that little March test screening, and then our next big screening was in July. Sean Hendricks, the new owner of
I saw that,
Fat Moose Comics. Sean is in the documentary. He's been on the show multiple times. I've always introduced him as, Fat Moose clerk, Sean Hendricks, but he recently took over at the beginning of 2020 as the owner. And I spoke to him, and he said that you guys had connected.
Yeah, he
as well.
called. Yeah, it was cool.
So he really, we're very happy for him. And he's actually going to be on our April 8th episode.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be a special documentary commentary track. And Chris will be Chris. You're Chris. Sean will be on for that. But he really spearheaded this Jersey screening because he had a lot of interest among his customers to see it. So I was like, all right, that'll be fun. It'll be a good time. So we rented out the Darris Theater and sold tickets. And this is in Boonton, New Jersey. Very old theater. Nice guy who ran it. I think he was actually in the process of selling or shutting it down. So might have been one of the last ones. And we had, maybe 30 or 40 people. So it was a decent turnout. Yeah. The audio-visual presentation was challenging. There were these huge fans right by the speakers, and the screen was out of focus. And for me, as the filmmaker,
it drives you nuts.
It drove me nuts. But again, focusing on the positive, the people still seemed into it. And so my takeaway was that the story was strong enough to overcome maybe not the sharpest presentation. And I was like, all right, like that's a good sign. People weren't like, oh, this is, like they were still able to get into it. So that was good. The next screening was mid-August. So this was now very close to the birth of our son. So Steph was so pregnant.
I remember, yeah.
And this was a film festival screening, the Chain New York City Film Festival. Relatively young fest, but I just came across it in my research, and I said, oh, it looks like a cool one, and I submitted, and thankfully it got in. We had a very, very small turnout for that, and it was frustrating because it was, it was in the city. It was on a Sunday, but again, weekends, over the summer, like people go away.
It's the city. There's a million
tough.
things going on.
Exactly. It's hard. But, I was hoping for a little stronger of a turnout, but again, good responses. And I got a great review of the movie coming out of it, and I've been able to kind of show that moving forward.
That's awesome.
And it won an award.
Oh, great.
It won
that's awesome.
Best New Work Award.
Cool.
I said, what is that?
Hey, look, it's nice. You could put that on the cover.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because like all the other, so unfortunately I couldn't go to the award ceremony because it was like days before the birth. But as we were leaving the screening, one of the organizers, he was like, "Are you going to come back for the awards?" And I said, "I don't know." He's like, "You should really come." I was like, "Oh, like this is this is really nice." So unfortunately I couldn't make it, but I saw the list online, and all the other awards. It's like all the typical things you would expect, like best directing or best edited, whatever. And and best new work, what what is that? So I asked him, and he was like, "Oh, it's like looking at life in a different way, or something like that." So I was like, "All right, that works."
Cool.
Yeah, shining a light on something that
people might not know,
that you maybe wouldn't know.
That's good.
So that was that. So again, really the review and the award, were wonderful things that are actually like tangible pieces that I can take moving forward. The next screening I did not attend, and I've not heard a single thing about it, so I have no idea how it went. But it played at Keystone Comic Con.
Oh yeah. I wasn't there. No. It took that show was the same time as Chicago last year.
Okay,
so we were there.
So one of Reed Pop's newer shows in Philadelphia, and they actually I think reached out to me through our mutual friend Delando, and so it played there. I don't know how it went. I
got to imagine. I mean, it's a big show. People definitely saw it.
Hopefully.
There's no panels that people don't go to at those things.
Yeah. So. I have to say, normally the prospect of having to miss any of my screenings, I would hate that. But for this, I was like, it's quite all right.
Yeah. No, that would be hard for me too.
That was literally the day he was born.
Yeah.
So, but so it did screen at Keystone Comic. If you're listening to this and you were at Keystone Comic Con and you went to the screening, please let me know because I have no idea. But it did screen there. Then most of the fall was quiet, but then we had a late fall screening in November at Yo-Fi Fest, the Yonkers Film Festival, in literally the same room that we had our test screening. Not as many seats filled at this one. Again, not to harp on this, but a little frustrating because one of the stores in the movie, Spider's Web, is 15 minutes from the location, and I was hoping for a little spillover, but that's okay. But again, as far as the positives, there was a mostly, I would say, older crowd and not into comics. And
that's what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I was like, not nervous, but I was like, I wonder how this is going to play for them. Like, hopefully it plays well because the goal for this has never been just to appeal to comics people, as I really think it taps into something larger. And during the Q&A, there was this older woman, and she raised her hand, and she was like, I'm not into comics, and I may be off base here. And I was like, oh, where's she going with this? She was like, for me, I looked at this as like my own routine. Like I have a Keurig at home, but I don't make my coffee at home because I rather walk to the local deli and get my coffee there so that I can have a conversation with the people there. She's like, is that what this is like? I was like, yeah, exactly.
Kinda, yeah.
And that, to me, like that really just crystallized everything. And I was like, okay, like if that's what she's getting from this, perfect. Because that's ultimately what this is getting at, like this sense of community and having the place
Everybody has
to go.
that thing.
So that was really nice. And then the other really, really, really valuable thing about that screening was I knew that I wanted to shave some more time off the movie. The version you saw the very first time was an hour 45, and I always knew I was going to trim it. But people responded so well at that screening. I was like, all right, I'll just take a few minutes off. And I felt like, it really covered so much. There's so many different topics. I was like, I can, maybe an hour and 40 minutes is okay. Like, it doesn't need to be 90 minutes. And I'm very proud of that 100-minute cut. And that's what played at all of these screenings. But I got to a point where, I was now seeing it over and over, and I was like, okay, I see some places where I can reel this in a little bit. And so going into that Yo-Fi screening, I was like, okay, I want to make some notes about where I can trim some more time, because I had in my head, I was like 85 minutes. Like, that's what I want to get for the final cut.
That's hard.
And my wife too, like we were both dialed in, and we had a great conversation after about like, okay, like this is where, things can kind of go a little bit. And then I went right back into editing, and I got it down to 86 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And
I watched the, I gotta say,
did?
I did. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I watched it last week. Thanks for sending it.
Oh, yeah.
And, it was, I noticed like a couple little things, I guess, but it flowed the same to me. So good job, I guess. I didn't notice like glaring omissions. Or
Good.
anything,
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a couple, not a ton of people have seen it at this point, but those who have basically said the same thing. Like, I don't know what you cut, which is good. And it's not like I chopped out
That means
entire.
you picked the right stuff. I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Like I didn't chop out entire segments or anything like that, but it was just the sort of thing where, especially after hearing that comment, from that festival goer, where I was like, there were a number of places where we got really specific on, some of the facets of the comic book industry. And I think for comic fans, like they would probably find it interesting. But for the non-initiated, like ordering incentive covers, I was like, I don't know if we really need that in this. I mean, I think really the themes of community and everything, like that's really what is driving this. So I just sort of, tightened up some of those things and evened it out a little bit more. I had some new music to work with. There's this band that our mutual friend Ralph Puma put me in touch with, Basic Printer. So there's actually a bunch more music in there now, and a couple more like montages where I pulled back on some of the talking heads and just kind of let the visuals speak a little bit. So yeah, overall, we got down to 86 minutes. And again, for anyone who's Kickstarter backers or anyone who came to these screenings and saw the original cut, again, I don't know. I mean, and I guess you've attested to this. I don't know that you necessarily watch it and be like, oh my God, where'd that go? And the things that you hopefully did enjoy, I think, are all still there. You still get, a real peek behind the curtain into what goes on behind the scenes of these stores and all of that. But yeah, that was sort of my guiding light, was like really focusing more on the themes of community.
And the Kickstarter version is the only release now with that, right?
That's right.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's
You
a real
collector's item.
item. And then our last screening was at Oh Yeah Comics in beautiful downtown Harrison in December.
I wanted to go to that. I think it was on my birthday or something.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was. That was attended by the store's owner, Mark Hammond, the beloved Steve Otto, and one customer. We had a very intimate screening. But again, it was during the week. It was close to the holidays. It was funny because Mark was like, we had a little bit of back and forth.
I'm surprised.
Because Mark was like, I have a screen. I'm like, great. But it turned out that was literally all he had. So but he did actually have a projector that he found, and that had speakers, so we were good to go. But for a moment there, it looked like we were only going to have picture and nothing else. But Odo came and he had the same reaction as you did. He was like, "What did you cut?" So that was
good.
That was good. And I appreciate that Mark let us do that there. But yeah, so those were the screenings, and now the movie's going to be out. It was a long road to find a distributor, but we got there. We have First Run Features. They're based out of Manhattan, and they've been in the game since the late 70s. So they've been around for a while. And we're planning on this release on Apple TV and Amazon, and potentially and hopefully other platforms. As we move forward, but at least those two. So for
those
people,
are big ones.
yeah, I mean, for
two
people
biggest.
who have been looking for a way and a place to watch this movie, here you go.
Yeah, that's good. Did they do like promo and stuff like that, or do they have like any kind of? I'm sure they got some kind of networking.
Yeah, I mean, so they have a publicist they work with, and they'll be putting out a press release. A lot of this is on me, which I understand, and that's fine, and I'm used to it. So, especially, my hope is that with their help, I can maybe tap more into, again, the non-comics world. Within the comics industry, thankfully, I mean, I have the contacts with these stores and the comics press and everything. So I'm confident, we'll get the word out in a big way within the comics industry. And then hopefully, with their help, we can, reach beyond that. Hopefully people watch it and hopefully they like it and we have, a good word of mouth. And, I think that should help.
That'll happen over time. That might take months of, check this out,
Right.
but it happens.
Yeah.
Believe me, I just watch so much stuff on Amazon that like the algorithm really does work well.
Yeah.
So if you watch something else, it's gonna recommend it.
Good.
Theoretically. Honestly, even if you just do like a small like Facebook, Instagram campaign, like it doesn't cost much, and you get a lot of results.
No,
you
I
can
do
really fine tune that in. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll do some ads. But it's interesting. I mean, I could do a whole thing on documentary distribution. I won't bore people with it, but because I know you had messaged me at one point and you mentioned like all these documentaries that are on Amazon. Amazon is actually fascinating because they have their Prime Video Direct program where, unlike pretty much any of these other platforms, content creators can directly upload their films to Amazon. And you can make it available to rent or buy. Amazon takes a 50% cut, or you can make it available for Prime streaming. Not as great a deal there. You get 6 cents per hour watched.
A lot of people, though.
I guess. I mean,
I don't know.
But that's sort of how that goes. For everyone who, a lot of people, were like, "Oh, you get it on Netflix." Yeah, that would be great. Like when we talk about the like these subscription video on demand platforms like Netflix and Hulu, and of course all these new ones now like Disney Plus and Apple Plus and Peacock, like all these things that are coming out. They're curated platforms. They don't take just anything. And more so now than ever, a lot of them really seem to be focusing on original content projects they commission as opposed to completed works that they acquire. And when they are acquiring product, and again, not surprisingly, like they're going for the big festival winners and, projects that have big names attached or, very high profile or timely subjects.
Makes sense. But you know what? They just need content.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, like I fell in love with Amazon Prime once I started. I never I've had Prime since the day it started. I've never watched Amazon Prime, and they have all the best old movies, and like the original content is on another level. And I told you that algorithm is great. Like you start watching anything, and it just I spent like 3 weeks with stuff in the background, and it was all great. And there's still a mountain of it left. So hopefully people just and it was funny. Like as I started finding some of this stuff, I started talking to other people about it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I watched that. And it was like this random video game documentary that like 2 guys just uploaded. So it does get in front of people. I got to say that.
Yeah. No, I'm hoping we can reach a lot of people. And again, as far as these curated platforms, the door's not closed, and hopefully, we can get there.
Also, it's a step. If you do other stuff in the future, it's you're there. You can snowball off of it.
And I think that's, because everything that I'm talking about as far as the distribution game, a lot of it I already knew from my prior experience and research, but some of it was, kind of new. And I think my main takeaway is that I don't expect that I would approach a project anymore the way I've done before, where I go off and I make it, and then I show up with a completed movie and I try to get it onto one of these things, because that, again, is a very, very difficult path. So I think in the future, it's going to be more about pitching a project, getting it funded.
That's nice. If it,
that's,
get it that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a big if.
But that's what I mean. Yeah. Having this stuff to bank off of is like, look, I already have all this stuff. It's not like you're just coming out of nowhere. Like, yeah, I'm going to make this thing. It's going to be good. Don't worry.
Right.
So everything has its place.
Exactly. So again, I really appreciate everyone's, interest in this and patience as we've been, working to get it out there. So, but whether you rent or buy it, I really hope you will, and I hope you enjoy and watch Chris in the movie.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to be completely cut out.
I don't think I got anything from you.
I don't think so either, but I wouldn't have,
Yeah, no.
I wouldn't have been mad again.
Yeah, no, I don't think I did, actually. But anyway, so that's sort of the, the documentary side of this. Before I let you go, we always have to have a little bit of pop talk.
Yeah.
Right, the Funko Pop. The listeners love it. Whenever we start talking pops, they turn it up. They love it.
Market research is off the charts.
So, I mean, not to be a downer, but one of our go-to places with the baby has been the Westchester Mall, especially over these winter months. Like, it's great. Like, we live very close. We go from garage to garage. It's bright. There's a lot of stuff for him to look at. Anyway, so we do go into Newberry Comics, which you mentioned before, and they're a chain, and it's a mixture of like apparel and records and comics, and they do have a lot of pops. And I've not been as dialed into the pops recently.
Yeah,
and
understandable.
I'm looking at a lot of these. I see Wheel of Fortune pops. I see the Cheetos Cheetah pop, like all this stuff.
Ad icons, I told you.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I know my own interest in them has waned a little bit. And I wanted to know, if you've noticed any drop. But I think that the main thing, though, that I want to say is, I think for me, we've always talked about how they're so appealing because it's like, oh, you can get a pop of something that like you never would have expected, or there's no other merchandise. And for a long time, that was a big driver for me. Seeing Sons of Anarchy pops. It was great. We did get the Office ones. We were very excited about that. But I feel like now there's a pop of everything that factor has diminished a little bit because it's not so much like, oh my God, now it's almost, you would just expect it.
That's true. That's true. But that doesn't change the fact that it may be the only piece of merch.
True.
Like how many, Alex Trebek figures do you have? You know what I mean? Like, so, that hasn't diminished it. Good. In that aspect. No, we've been off the road, like I said, since November, so about 3 months. So I can't gauge it slowing down from like a mass, convention angle, but I haven't noticed anything store-wise.
All right, good.
Nothing's been changed. I said from the beginning their biggest issue is going to be just there is so much, and every time people first get in, they go too hard and they buy too much, and then they got to thin it back. And they learn where to like focus their collection. Everybody does it, But a lot of that old stuff has been going up, and I've noticed that like they've been making less of certain things, and stuff's been getting vaulted quicker. So like a lot of these commons that were out 6 months ago, all of a sudden are like a ton, and like stuff that was warming the shelf last year is like $50 now because they didn't make enough of it, and people they don't prioritize it when they see it on the shelf, and then they're like, oh, let me go get that. And like, oh, there's none left anywhere.
Right.
So yeah, that's been good for the collectors because if you do have those random ones, like some of those Office pops are already like 3-hole shirt gym or whatever it is.
Yeah.
3-hole. It's like $80 already.
Wow.
And like Prison Mike's like $60+, and like and those just came out.
Yeah.
So
all right.
So
good.
yeah.
Certainly like, I'm glad to hear that. And certainly for your sake, it's like, I'm glad that they're doing well. I think for us too, off mic, you and I were talking about house hunting, and I think for us that's the other big factor. Is like we don't have space, and it's like even though yes we could store them. I mean we do have a storage unit, or we could bring them to my in-laws. It's like I think that's sort of a deterrent where it's like what are we going to do with these?
Yeah, no, and I again going back, that's the number one issue people are going to have is space. And even if you're not buying the rare ones, like they're $10, $12. It builds up quick, That's like one statue, you can get 50 pops, and they take up space. And that's the biggest thing they have going against them is that they are so accessible. I don't know. But it's hard because now let's say you're like, oh, I really like The Office, but we'll get it when we get the house. But then you go back and these pops are $200 each. So you should get them and just throw them in storage,
Yeah.
But then if you already have the storage, it's fine. But I know all these people that are just paying to store their pops, and it's like, well, at that point, just throw them away and buy them later because you're going to spend more money storing the damn things,
Yeah.
So it's, we've been buying a lot of collections lately. So I think some of the older people are moving out or thinning their collections because they see that they have a lot of money sitting there from stuff they paid for like $10. But the new people are still coming in, and there's always going to be something that you're like, oh, I got to buy this. This is my favorite thing in the world. So
yeah, I will say I saw they're doing Good Place pops. That was exciting.
Yeah. See?
Yeah, no, I know. That's like there are things that are still if they ever do another wave of Smallville, which I doubt, but those would be definitely.
Yeah, those are getting really hard to find. We were just talking about that last week. I haven't seen any of them, and because somebody was asking me if I can get them a Tom Welling pop signed in Cleveland or wherever they're going to be, and I was like, I haven't seen them. I'll keep an eye out at C2E2 for you, but we haven't had them, and that's the thing. They just dry up sometimes, and then that's it. It's hard. The grease pops were everywhere, and then John Travolta did like a one-off signing last year, and I sourced everybody I know, and I was able to find one grease pop, and that was like everywhere 2 months before that. It's hard.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you want to say?
No, I think we got through. It's fun doing this again. It's been a while. Glad to be back, and thanks for everything. And I can't wait for the show, and hopefully everything pans out like we were talking about, and it'll be good. Maybe if you guys have time, you can do some kind of panel there or something like that. We could talk about that.
Oh yes,
or a screening panel, something. I don't know. We can figure it out. We
have
a screen and a projector and speakers.
And speakers?
Yes,
all right.
We have it all, and microphones. So,
All right, we'll talk. Well, thank you so much for being part of this,
No,
for being my
happy to
first
be there.
recording
Yeah.
back. I appreciate it. And I know the guests always enjoy the guests.
I hope so.
The listeners
you guys
always
are
enjoy hearing
probably
from
sick
you.
of me, but I love doing it. So thanks. Anytime you need me.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. Thank you to everyone for listening. Make sure you keep your eye out for tickets to Undiscovered Realm Comic Con. I hope to see you there. Be sure to check out My Comic Shop Country, and then be back here on April 8th for the Homecoming Part 3, which, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be a special movie commentary track with Fat Moose Comics owner Sean Hendricks. So that should be a lot of fun. Until then, don't be a flat squirrel.